Harrell.
Joining us now, we've got the Senator from District 5, Senator Brian King, back with us. Good morning, Brian.
Hey, good to be on, Paul.
So you're in this campaign. We're in this primary race between you and Bob Ballinger. I would just like, Brian, first of all, for you to kind of give us an update, if you can, on when you go around campaigning and, door knocking or whatever it is that you're doing. What are people in your district concerned about?
Well, I think with the recent headlines, a lot of it's been the corruption, and that's been falling in line with what I've been saying for years, and, that's one of the reasons why they've tried to discredit me. I mean, Representative Ballinger keeps trying to play desperation politics and take things down the mud and misrepresent my record, but yet when you go out there and just like in the debates, he had to be corrected multiple times. And then on the FOI issue, it's one thing to have an opinion or try and tout something, which he's obviously been multiple times when he said that the FOI bill that he and Hester fought so hard for, he said it would actually increase transparency. There is nobody out there of any credible credentials or anything
that says that,
to have said that other than him. And then when he goes into the debates, he had to be corrected. And, we're going to be putting out a video showing exactly what happened in the debates and exactly what happened in the committee. And it's going to be much different than what Bob Ballinger says.
Yeah. So let's talk about freedom of information. We have the best Freedom of Information Act in the nation. It's like one of the only things that Arkansas is like in the number one column. And getting access to those documents and the government having to comply within 3 days is fantastic. I mean, it's good for the people, and it keeps the politicians honest. And yet, the people who are in power in cities and local governments and down at the Capitol, sometimes when you ask for the documents under Freedom of Information, they claim you're abusing the Freedom of Information Act. Well, I'm sorry, but it is what it is, and you got to comply.
Well, what they're really saying, in like Representative Ballard says, they're not abusing the Freedom of Information Act. What they are is they're claiming that they're abusing their right to know what the government's doing. I mean, that's just it. I mean, we have to operate as a government with transparency and, like I said, know what the government's doing. But if you look at our tax dollars that go out there to the colleges and universities, then, you should know where that money is spent and what it was spent on. And just like the college over there that's been embroiled in the controversy, they don't want to release what happened with your tax dollars. I mean, they should have done this months ago within a few days of being asked, is put everything on the table. And we still don't know everything about the deal. We don't know anything about the Hollingsworth connections to the legislators. One of the other things, too, Paul, that people don't look at is the connections between legislator and legislator. I mean, if you look at recently what came out on the Arkansas Times blog about Senator Hutchison being on the payroll of another Medicaid entity. Michael Lamoureux is on the payroll of another Medicaid entity. They kept all that secret and hidden. And that's why they continually go out here and they continually fight Medicaid disclosure bills, is because there actually was something going on.
I think in terms of not getting those documents and how Ecclesia spent the money, I think the people of Arkansas need to demand that the state of Arkansas do its job and audit this if they haven't done it already. I think this. What are we supposed to do? Does the state of Arkansas need to be sued? So that they will actually try to figure out where our tax dollars went. Why don't we have these documents yet? They took public money, and we should have these documents to figure out exactly how it was spent, especially in light of the fact of people going to jail over general improvement fund money. Why wouldn't we want to know everything?
Now, that's a question, Mr. Ballinger refuses to answer, and that's why he's been called out consistently in the newspapers. He'll call it fake news, knows it's real news. And in the trial, it found out that Bob Ballinger's client, somebody he's maintained their innocence right up
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. We are in the second week now of early voting, and you guys need to go vote if you haven't. The phone number, call or text 870-275-9799. If you are just joining us, if you're listening for the first time, please keep listening. And I want you to know you're going to be hearing information about the state of Arkansas and the state of politics that you're not going to hear anywhere else. This is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. And the more people out there that listen, the faster it happens, right? And if you want to, again, contribute, 870-275-9799, or go over to facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News, where you can watch us do the program live. Man, there's a lot of stuff that's happening. There are a lot of well, let me just say, social media. Isn't it isn't it great? Yeah, a little bit of sarcasm in there. I mean, it can certainly be a useful tool, but boy, it can also be so frustrating when you can listen. Well, I think it's just sad when you have public officials that put out misinformation. I remember a time where we all thought, as conservatives, now when I say we, I'm talking about those of us who believe in limited government and not growing government, that sort of thing. Back in 2013, Arkansas Republicans had a slim majority, and they went along with all of the Democrats. A minority of Republicans went along with all the Democrats, and they gave us Obamacare in Arkansas. They implemented one key pillar, Medicaid expansion, which essentially took us from having 700,000 people on Medicaid welfare to 1 million out of 3 million people here in the state. I mean, that's when it all comes down to. That's what happened. Now, I remember a time back then where conservative Republicans were outraged that Republican establishment types who were growing government were looking at all of us with a straight face, saying what they were doing is not Obamacare. It's not Obamacare. It's not Obamacare. It's not Obamacare. And I said, yes, it is Obamacare. Here's in the Affordable Care Act where it talks about Medicaid expansion. You guys are expanding Medicaid. No, it's not Obamacare because we're giving the taxpayer dollars to Blue Cross Blue Shield, so it's not Obamacare. They tried these dishonest intellectuals tried to tell you that it was free market. Actually, no, we're Republicans and we're embracing the free market because we're taking that Obamacare money and we're giving it to Blue Cross and Blue Shield. See, we're so free market, right? Yeah, and that's been proven to be a complete disaster, this $2 billion windfall for insurance companies. And really and truly, the people are the ones being oppressed here. I mean, the government's giving the Blue Cross Blue Shield your money to oppress, the rest of us. You say, okay, well, able to work people who don't work, they're getting taken care of. The insurance company gets paid whether or not any of these people go to the doctor. The rest of us out here in the real world that are working, we're being oppressed by this. Our taxpayer dollars are being oppressed. Pharmacists are being oppressed with their own tax dollars going to CVS Caremark. Anyway, I remember a time where that alone, looking at us with a straight face and saying, it's not Obamacare, was thought to just be, it made limited government conservatives like myself just kind of made our heads explode because we beat them. We beat them. We took it to the people. We took to the people the truth, and we said, yes, it is Obamacare. And in many cases, there's a lot of establishment people that lost because the people found out what they did. And they were trying to defend it. They're like, no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing I did, but it's not Obamacare, but it's a good thing. And people found out the truth and kicked him out of office. It was awesome. It was great. It was fantastic. Once the people had the truth, what they were able to do with it, the establishment altered their tactics, though. And so instead of defending what they did, now they essentially started running campaigns using the opposite or their own opponent's talking points. So instead of even mentioning Medicaid expansion, they just constantly say they're against Obamacare, and they say, I'm against Obamacare, I'm against Obamacare. And if you press them at all to try to pin them down one way or the other, they say, you know what, if you want to fix that, you should run for Congress. That's not a state issue. We have no control over Obamacare. And it's like, oh my gosh, yes, you do. You could have not implemented it. We could end the program. And again, it was all about taking 700,000 people who are on a program and increasing it to 1 million. And we have 3 million people in this state. 3 million people are in this state. And a third of us are on Medicaid. Congratulations, Republicans. Great job, you establishment progressives. Fantastic job you guys have done. Wow. Now, the reason I bring that up is because there was a lot of us that were optimistic, wrongly so. We thought them just looking us in the face and saying what they were doing was the opposite of what it actually was. You know, just lying, saying it's not Obamacare, it's not Obamacare, Arkansas, trust it's not Obamacare. I guess some of us lied to ourselves or were too optimistic, and we thought, well, it's just an isolated incident to intentionally mislead the voters on this, because after all, right, they're all Republicans, and they're supposed to have the moral high ground, right? Man, was I wrong. Was I wrong? I'm telling you. I mean, think about it. Now they've passed a tire tax. They created a new tax on your tires, and they increased the old tax that's on your tires. And you know what? You know what they say? They say, we didn't increase your taxes on tires. We didn't increase your taxes on tires. They now go out there and they just say, no, we didn't do that, when they did it. We've got the Department of Finance and Administration's own documents that they submitted during the committee process while they were passing the bill, saying this is going to bring the government in this amount of money, which is more than what we're currently making on these RIM fees. Boy, you thought it was an isolated incident. No, now they actually say, no, we didn't increase your taxes. And if you press them down a little bit, they'll say, well, it's just a fee. We increase your fees. We didn't increase your taxes. You know, they think you're stupid when they say that. They think that you are dumb. And you're not dumb. And you know what? Their jobs are not very hard. Let me say that again. A legislator's job, I know you want to think that your job's tough. I know you want to think that but there's a ton of other people out there actually creating things of value in the private market that could do your job, with one hand tied behind their back. They just don't have time to take the pay cut, and they're out there actually creating something while you're trying to pass laws, trying to steal from them what you can't create for yourself. And then if you take all of that and you put it up next to all of the public corruption that we now see on our headlines among these establishment progressive Republicans controlling Arkansas, John Woods, right, found guilty. You got the lobbyist, Randall Shelton. You got a Christian college and the president that they were funneling money through to launder back to the consultant that would go to the kickbacks? A Christian college was used, and the president of the college was in on it and pled guilty to it? I mean, it's embarrassing, ladies and gentlemen. They had a scheme where they were going to legalize medical marijuana, and then they were going to take the tax dollars from medical marijuana and funnel it to the Christian college. It's just embarrassing on so many fronts. The same establishment people in this Republican Party of Arkansas that refused for a year and a half to call for Senator Jake Files to resign, even after a sworn FBI affidavit was made available where, under penalty of perjury, the FBI, in order to obtain the search warrant, laid out the entire case against Senator Jake Files. And yet the RPA and our governor were silent. They would not call for his resignation. They didn't want a special election to have to be called. At this time, they wanted to be able to manage it so that they could make sure they get the right person that they want or the right candidate they want on the ballot. I remember a time in 2013 we thought them lying to us was just, it's just on this issue of Obamacare. And yet, the internet tax, it's not a new tax. You already owe it. Well, it's more money coming out of the people's pocket. That's a tax increase, because the definition of a tax increase is more money going to the government than is currently going to the government. That's called a tax burden on the people. No. You guys are, no. And they just tell you the complete opposite of what is actually happening. I mean, whether you believe me or not, if you've got two sides saying completely the opposite thing, somebody's not telling the truth. Somebody's not telling the truth. At least, certainly logic would bring you to that conclusion. So the question is, you've got to decide, and you need to decide who you trust. I mean, not even that. I mean, I think the trust that Conduit has built is proven over the, just look at the predictions and look at where we are now. I mean, it's all, whether we tell you that, basically, this is what I've discovered. Reading the bills and telling the people what's in the bills and using what the words written down in the bills are to predict what's going to happen next is very effective. And it's driving the people at the Marble Palace crazy when we're actually telling you what's in the bills that they are passing. Actually reading you the bills, reading you the words that craft the laws that we all have to live under is what's driving them nuts. And that's essentially all that's happening. That's all. Somebody is watching what the words actually say. And they can't stand it. Matter of fact, I want you to know something. I'm not gonna mention anything specific on purpose and intentionally. So, but I was watching social media, folks. We're in their heads. The Marble Palace, the people who attend court at the Marble Palace, to pay tribute to the king, we're in their heads. You would not believe it, but we're in their heads. And Conduit News Radio is a huge part of that. You are a huge part of that, because they know, and they're getting really frustrated because more and more people are listening, and more of their constituents are starting to call them out personally, call them out and just say, or just ask a question. And the question alone reveals that they're getting their information from somewhere other than a government source. They're getting their information somewhere other than a government source or a media source that's very much supported by the government through advertising this agency or that agency. And that makes them very, very nervous and upset. I was talking to a friend who lives in central Arkansas, and this person told me that that they're seeing Jan Morgan signs everywhere. Everywhere. And I am too. I'm seeing them in a lot of places around my neck of the woods. The phone number is 870-275-9799. The only reason I bring that up, and look, it's going to be, there's really, I don't think there's any way to tell exactly. I don't think you can trust the polls in this situation, the ones that we've seen anyway. But do you remember where when people were in the aftermath of Donald Trump's victory, people were like, "How did he win Pennsylvania? How did this happen? How did this happen?" And there was some obscure report that had been filed right before the election that talked about just driving down some rural country roads and seeing all of these Trump signs in people's yards, and how normally it doesn't matter what the political season is, that many of these houses never participate in the electoral process at all. They just don't. And you saw this all across the country in terms of, you saw this in Arkansas in 2016 in the primary where Donald Trump won. You got to remember this. Donald Trump won the Arkansas primary. And there were people who came out in this state who had never participated before. And that is why Governor Asa Hutchinson is so worried. That is why he refuses to debate Jan Morgan, because he knows that if that happens, if the people who came out and voted for Donald Trump in Arkansas in the primary, if they do it again, it's going to be close. And if you were to debate Jan Morgan, which he refuses to do, Jan Morgan would win rank and file Republicans over, like she has done at every county committee she's been to. So, something to think about. By the way, we're going to be talking with Jan Morgan coming up at 7:33. Then we're going to be talking with Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon at 7:05 about some Freedom of Information Act stuff. Don't go anywhere. Happy Monday to you. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality.
It's been said that freedom is in the DNA of every American, and I would say every Arkansan. Our nation and state are now in danger of letting our God-given freedom slip away by allowing government to be the arbiter of freedom. I agree with President Ronald Reagan, who said, and I quote, "In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem," end quote. Government is too large, too overreaching, and too corrupt. President Reagan also said, and I quote, "The most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help,' end quote. This race is about voting for the candidate who best represents your interest, your family, and your future. For the last 2 terms in office, I've kept my promises to you, and I ask for your help to continue to represent our joint values of faith, family, and a protected future. I'm State Representative Dan Sullivan, and the choice is clear. I ask for your vote to continue our stand for freedom. Early voting is underway, and the election is May 22nd.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Unusual for incumbent governor to have a serious primary race. Why now? The latest article up at conduit4action.org. The May 22nd primary between incumbent Governor Asa Hutchinson and Jan Morgan is unlike any we have seen in decades. How? Well, incumbent governors haven't had a competitive race in their own primary in a very long time. People born after mid-1972, listen to this, Arkansas, have never voted in a primary election where an incumbent governor had a competitive primary race. Not since Governor Bill Clinton ran for re-election in 1990 has an incumbent governor had a meaningful primary. Incumbent governors ran for re-election in 94, 98, 2002, and 2010. In two of those years, 94 and 2010, the incumbent governor escaped without any primary election opponent. In the other two primaries, the incumbent governor received at least 85.44% of the vote in his primary. The only published poll for this Republican primary is the Talk Business and Politics Hendricks College poll of 676 GOP voters. The poll was conducted on April 17th through the 19th. In the poll, Hutchinson had 57.5% to Jan Morgan's 30.5% and 12% undecided. The poll was reported as good news for Hutchinson, but is it? First, the early poll with 42.5% saying not saying Hutchinson, meaning 42.5% if you combine the 30 and the 12. They're saying we're not picking Hutchinson at the moment. Shows a huge problem for the governor, considering he has been governor for 4 years and considering over the past 24 years incumbent governors have had no more than token opposition. Second, Jan Morgan was relatively unknown to voters. When the poll was done, there was no Morgan campaign signs to be found, no campaign ads for Morgan airing, and the liberal media paid little attention to Morgan, while filling up newspapers and media reports with everything Hutchinson has to say. Morgan's campaign has been largely word of mouth and social media. Well, let me tell you something. I had a person I work with here at the station where we do the program, and this woman came to me, and over the years I would describe her as maybe a middle of the road person on politics, and some of the times that we've talked, I've disagreed and that sort of thing. But very economically, very conservative economically, very much so. And fiscally is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, this woman, she comes to me and she says, did you get it was an event up here. She said, did you get your Jan Morgan tickets yet? And I was like, wait a second, how do you know about Jan Morgan? She's like, oh yeah, I love Jan Morgan. I follow her on Facebook, and all of my friends have been down to her shooting range, the gun cave, and taken her class and everything else. And anyway, and I thought, wow, if this is a trend here, I'm telling you, there's a voter here potential that is untapped, that may be being tapped in Arkansas here this time. Not to mention, you hear the liberal media say nothing about the potential first female governor, by the way. You hear none of that from them. Just going to throw that out there. It's largely word of mouth, yet she is being met with large crowds wherever she speaks. Hutchinson and Morgan spoke at separate events in Benton on May 3rd. She drew the much larger crowd, which would not have fit in the venue where Hutchinson spoke. The positives for Governor Hutchinson is he's got the power of incumbency, a huge campaign war chest to fund a media barrage. The negatives for the governor are Jan Morgan is an articulate speaker with a solid conservative message of believing in smaller, transparent, constitutional government, puts more money and freedom back into the hands of the people. The Morgan campaign has developed into a true grassroots movement, and Hutchinson is carrying a lot of political baggage from positions that run counter to the traditional Republican base, and this is a Republican primary. Back in a minute.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So he pleaded guilty. From 2012 to 2016, while that college was struggling financially, which that's a great idea for a college, noble cause that is for the students. But yet, from 2012 to 2016, the Paris family took out over $1 million in salaries while the college was struggling financially. Also, since Bob Ballinger is their attorney, why would they invest $675,000 into a piece of property that assesses for $200-something thousand?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if your college is struggling financially and you need help, why are you investing in another land deal out there? I mean, it just seems like that's not the right thing to do with people's tax dollars.
Yeah, and you mentioned Al Hollingsworth's name, and so there's still question about what because he had to do with that land deal, and we still have a lot of questions about and the thing is, you don't just want to make an accusation, but the documents are there. We just need to see the documents so we can air it all out and figure out what's what the deal is. And that's what's so frustrating with it. Concerning, you have somebody who was involved with it, 2 people, 3 people, Orrin Paris pleading guilty, the other 2 found guilty, involving this college. Brian, can I ask you a question? Because I said this in the first hour, because I was just kind of rehashing the convictions and everything else. I mean, for Republicans to be involved in this, and Republicans are supposed to be, the moral high ground party, or at least that's what they claim to be. But to launder money, using a Christian college and a consulting firm, I mean, the operative word there being Christian, I mean, this really stinks to high heaven.
Well, and we get into multiple, as other things keep coming out, just like Senator Hutchison, Senator Lamoureux at the time, were on the payroll. We also need to know and start asking questions, what business have you done with other legislators? Because one of the concerns now, as more of this comes to light, is that was money passed to legislators in one way or another, and then all of a sudden that money went out.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Just an observation, just because we basically, so when we do the radio program and we go to break a couple of times during the hour, right? Our system fires the way this works is fires like a closure to our other boxes. So each station that carries this program has a box that we send them. And our computer system here that we use sends a closure to that box, and then that triggers the local advertisements to play for your local affiliate, for the local affiliates that are carrying Conduit News, and we appreciate them very, very much. Now, so when that happens, you hear your local ads. Well, so we do the show. Okay, I live in Northeast Arkansas, so I'm at a studio here, and that's where we're doing the program. And I can hear the local ads that play in our system. I can hear the local ads that play for this affiliate up here, and so I'm wondering if this is a trend, because the commercial. I mean, I'm hearing more and more of these local commercials that are they're national buys, but they're done by actors who are selling a product of some kind, but they put they're doing a Southern accent. They're doing so, and I wonder if you guys have heard these. It'll be for some product that they're selling nationwide, but the guy that you're hearing is clearly talking like this. Do you do this? Do you want more of this? Well, I got a product for you, buddy. And I'm just thinking, listen, I know we all have accents. I got that. But is anyone insulted by it? Is anyone insulted? It's like, why don't you just tell me about the product you're trying to sell me the way you talk for real, and then I'll decide whether or not I want it or not. I think that'd be better. But instead, it's like, no, they think you're an idiot. They think you won't trust anybody unless they talk like this. Anyway, the phone number, 870-275-9799. So we are in the midst of the primary season, and there are acts of desperation going on for people who are very desperate to get in office. Maybe they've got polling that they don't like. Maybe they've done a poll, in these a lot of polling places. It's very expensive to do a poll, and so the well-funded candidates certainly will do one for themselves, and they'll look to see kind of where they are in the race. So the Jonesboro Sun, and I know we've highlighted this, and we're gonna talk with Joey McCutcheon about freedom of information and Ecclesia College coming up at 7:05. You don't want to miss it. We've got some interesting news that we need to talk about. There's been some reporting by Mike Masterson and a Southwest Times Record about this situation over the weekend, and we'll talk more about that at 7:05. And in that, we're going to end up talking about the Senate race between Bob Ballinger and Brian King, Senator Brian King, and we'll talk more about some desperate things that are going on in that race as well. But highlighting a Republican primary, again, in District 53, which is a portion of Craighead County, you have a guy, State Representative Dan Sullivan, who has one of the most conservative voting records that there is. He was against the internet sales tax. He was against the tire tax. He was against the gas tax, right? He voted against the bad tort reform bill. Now, Dan Sullivan is retired from a healthcare company, behavioral health company called Ascent. Okay. Now, there was a tragedy that happened last year, where there was a care facility in West Memphis, and there was a tragedy. There was a child that passed away because there were workers there that left the child in the car, and the child passed away. And Dan Sullivan's opponent brought this up. Cole Peck brought this up at the Craighead County Republican committee meeting where the two men were speaking there. And the Jonesboro Sun reports this. Jonesboro Sun says that Dan Sullivan's opponent, Cole Peck, said, quote, speaking of the death of the child, it was not an isolated incident, and it speaks to Sullivan's moral character. It's not right. So the next time I see a person holding a Dan Sullivan sign and saying, vote for Dan Sullivan, I'm going to assume that you're okay with hitting kids, slapping kids, losing kids, leaving kids in a hot van to die. We can do better, and that's why I'm running, end quote. Well, at least we know why he's running, finally. Apparently, he thinks trying to exploit the tragedy of the loss of a child is a good political tool to assume power. It's very, very sad. It really is. Now, in this instance that happened with the child, the company had policies that were not followed, obviously. Don't you think? Don't you think that a company has policies in a big company like Ascent where they have something on the list? Don't leave a child in a van. Don't leave children unattended. I mean, that's going to be your first rule, right? And in these instances, you have people who broke the law, and they're being dealt with. The authorities are dealing with the employees of this company. I saw somebody on Facebook the other day, and I believe it was deleted later, thank goodness, who just said, "Oh yeah, they're accusing them of murder, essentially, is what's going on here. It's absolutely, in a Republican primary, I think it may be a new low in Arkansas Republican primary. I really, really do. I think this is a new low. And I don't know if he's got polling that he doesn't like, and that's why he's doing this. But I talked to somebody who was at the committee, because when this is Grant Stewart of the Jonesboro Sun that's writing this article, reporting what happened. And I talked to somebody who was at that Republican Party committee meeting of Craighead County, and I said, did he really say this? Did he really look at you guys and say that if you support Dan, you're okay with kids dying? I mean, Nancy Pelosi much? And they said, yeah. He was pointing his finger at us. He was like, so I just thought this was this guy's deplorable moment. He's essentially looking. He's not even a member of that committee. He comes out of nowhere. He's backed by healthcare interests, right? And then you've got Dan Sullivan, who has an amazing voting record, number one. And number two, was the CEO of Ascent Healthcare and voted against tort reform. Now, bad tort reform. But think about that for a second. Do you understand? And you know what he says? He says, well, because it was better for the people for this not to be passed. It would have been great for the healthcare industry that could be sued from tragic events like this. But guess what? He didn't vote for it. He didn't vote with his industry in mind. He voted with the people in mind. What a low. Really, really sad. And that's why I'm running, he says. And that's why I'm running. Really, really sad. Let me read you Dan Sullivan's comments in the Sun. Grant Stewart writes, Sullivan responded by saying the incident in June 2017 was tragic and said that people had come down to investigate the issue and found that if people had followed the policies that were in place, the child would be alive. Quote, the police arrested the people responsible. It's tragic. I met with the mom the next day and the grandparents to understand the grief they went through. I will let my record stand for itself about how I have worked with the people in this community. If this is going to become a debate on my character, I'm going to put that to the side and let the voters decide. There is a lot more at stake here. Yeah, there really is, because when I look at, what this particular race, if you hone in on it, I don't hear Kolpeck talk about the tire tax. I don't hear him talk about where he stands on the internet tax. I don't hear him talk about where he stands on the gas tax. I don't hear him talk about where he stands on the military tax cut that was a net tax increase, where they raised candy and soda and created a digital downloads tax. I don't hear him talk about dicamba. Where is he on dicamba? Does he support Monsanto? I don't hear him talk about these issues. These are the issues that are important to all Arkansas. And if you get down, closer to a local level, you look at other issues like the International Property Maintenance Code, which is by the way, if your local community, if you're listening across the state and your local government or your city is trying to institute the International Property Maintenance Code, you need to defeat it as best you can, because it's a terrible, terrible thing, and it was defeated in Northeast Arkansas after it was implemented. Then they had a referendum on it and defeated it. It's a terrible thing. So there's also local issues here that I think in the past, I interviewed Dan Sullivan several times about the International Property Maintenance Code. And it was not necessarily a General Assembly issue, but as a state representative, he was very active and involved in the local community, saying, "Hey, this is big government. We don't need to increase the size and scope of government in this way." And so it's a big deal. And here's the thing, and this is where anytime you're running in a Republican primary and you don't want to come on this program and you avoid coming on this particular program, it's a huge red flag. I mean, it just is. It's a huge red flag. And I'll let you have, I'll debate with you. I'll ask you tough questions, but I mean, you're welcome to come on and tell me, where you think we should go, or tell me where I'm wrong, or what, and we just can have a conversation about it. And Dr. Kolpeck doesn't want to do that. He had those weird comments the other day about putting a price on human life. It was very strange. So, anyway, I'm going to move on from that, but that is a new low. When you are so desperate to win that you demagogue the death of a child in an attempt to win an election. You heard me a second ago. I was pretty speechless. Just reading it out loud is very, it's just sad that we people are going to stoop to that level and then claim the moral high ground after doing something like that. The telephone number is 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the conversation. You can go to facebook.com/Conduit News if you would like to watch us do the program. That's always very, very interactive. We're going to take a break now and be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for listening.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
Arkansans need a true judicial conservative on the Supreme Court. David Sterling is that man. Sterling believes in the separation of powers in our government, and he will interpret the Constitution based on the original intent of the Founding Fathers. A member of the NRA and the Christian Legal Society, Sterling will serve Arkansans with honor and integrity as our next Supreme Court Justice. On May 22nd, vote David Sterling.
Paid for by Friends of David Sterling.
With public corruption and scandals in the news daily, Arkansans need someone with honesty and integrity in the state Senate. Mark Johnson is that man. Mark Johnson isn't a politician. He's a fifth-generation Arkansan and a successful small business owner. Mark Johnson will make ethics a priority and demand swift punishment for those who violate the public trust. Mark Johnson is pro-life and supports the Second Amendment. In the Republican primary, vote Mark Johnson for the state Senate. Paid for by Mark Johnson for Arkansas.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yes, in the home stretch here. I just want to remind everybody, I know I said this at the top of the show, we're in the last week of early voting, and the election's a week from tomorrow. If you haven't voted yet, you need to go vote. I would encourage you, we're going to have a new whiteboard up here tomorrow, but we still got the old one from last week. I would encourage you to vote to cap corruption. Now, notice it doesn't say vote to end corruption, because it's just not possible to end corruption. It just isn't. We are fallen people, and government is going to be corrupt to some degree or another. So you've got to cap it. Well, how do you cap corruption? Well, my conclusion is you have to send government less money for them to steal. So John Woods stole money, enriched himself. Jake Files stole money, enriched himself. Mike and Neil stole money, enriched himself. These are all politicians, you know. The lobbyists stole money to enrich themselves. And the fact is, if there's less of it going to government, then there's going to be less of it for them to steal. You get it? So when they come at us and they say, we want to raise your taxes on groceries in some sort of weird shell game, we promise we'll lower your taxes over here, but we're going to... No. If you want to cap corruption, we've got to stop. We've got to dam up these tributaries that are flowing into this massive river that's funding government. You got to stop. You got to cut them off. And then when they try to build new ones, they try to dig more trenches, try to figure out a way to get more water into the system, we have to say, no, you're not. We have to turn into, eco-environmentalists like, crazy people. Maybe it's a bad analogy to use as a conservative, but you get the picture, right? That's the way in my brain. That's just it's just the way that I see it. I see all this money flowing into the Marble Palace. And then they want more ways for it to flow into the Marble Palace. That's why fundamentally the invention of the internet that has seen them get less money from commerce is a good thing. I mean, there's still revenue still continues to grow year over year for these people. Month over month, they're still getting record revenue from us. And yet they look at the internet and they say, we've got to tax these people. We've got to get government involved somehow. Folks, if you give them more money, they'll find more ways to steal it, to enrich themselves, to enrich their friends. Now, they'll give the money in the form of government contracts to some lucky person. And then you're expected to take that money and tithe it back to the political action committees that Asa and the Marble Palace tell you to. And then those political action committees, in turn, support the big government candidates and protect the status quo. That's just so you know, that I know for a fact that us telling you what goes on, the money scheme that goes on there, is driving them nuts, specifically using the phrase tithe. Everybody in Arkansas, if you're mildly religious, understand the concept of what a tithe is, right? And so when Asa, nods, or I don't know, I dream of Jeannie's money somewhere, when he does that to whatever company or whoever it goes to, that entity is expected to tithe a portion of that to the political action committees that the Marble Palace deems worthy of funding. And then from there, those PACs distribute the money to the candidates they want to keep in line. Not to mention, if the money dries up, by the way, then politicians, the dishonest ones, let's say the politicians with no principles, the politicians who are just like, well, I'm going to do I'm going to be loyal to whoever I get money from. That's just who I am. And I'm the type of I'm going to be loyal to that person. Okay, all right. You have no principles. I got it. Except the principle of, greed or self-preservation. That's, That's the way it is. Well, if we send them less money and cap corruption that way, well, now all of a sudden, what are you going to do? You know, maybe we can make. What if we just try to make being a politician, like as non-lucrative as we can? Is non-lucrative a word? Am I saying that right, or is that a good phrase to use? We need to make it less lucrative. Let's try to make being a politician less lucrative for them personally. How about that? Well, how would you do that? Well, you're going to have something that we all call limited government. You have to limit what the government can do to everybody else by force. And if you don't have money, you can't do anything. And here in Arkansas, in order to spend money, we have a pesky little constitutional requirement that requires 75% of each chamber to spend the people's money, which means the people who wrote Arkansas's Constitution understood at least one basic fact, that if the government is going to do X, we don't want 51% agreement. We want a super majority agreement. We want to make sure that before the government does X, before it actually spends money, we want a massive consensus. We want a 75% consensus. That is huge. And so at heart, and I mean, I know we had the Democrats for 138 years here in Arkansas legislatively who, and yet, you know, essentially, I mean, it's just not conservative policies, or at least it ended up not being that way. I mean, of course, you know, JFK, if he ran today, would not get the Democrat nomination. He couldn't. So, I mean, yeah, obviously the party's becoming more and more, you know, just crazy. And now that, you know, you've got the sinking ship of the Democrat Party in Arkansas, and what's left, you've got the, you know, Democrats jumping ship, you know, and putting a, you know, taking off their blue T-shirt and putting on a red T-shirt and acting like a Republican just because they have no principles and they just want the power. We have to cap the corruption, ladies and gentlemen. You have to go and vote. You have to go vote. There's big primaries going on all over the state, and there's a giant one too, right? There's the one between incumbent Governor Asa Hutchinson, who has grown spending $600 million, who has advocated tax increases, who has raised your taxes on tires, digital downloads, wanted to raise them on groceries until Jan Morgan got in the race, wanted to be on the side of CVS Caremark and the big pharma before Jan Morgan got in the race. If you want, I'm telling you, Asa wouldn't even have these conservative positions right now if it wasn't for Jan Morgan running. If that and alone is a victory in and of itself. But yeah, and also, yeah, if it wasn't for Jan Morgan, we wouldn't. That audio of reminding Asa that he always was opposed to the grocery tax wouldn't have even made it into the public. Yeah, whoops, you forgot that you said that, didn't you? I mean, the tax farce has been torpedoed because Jan Morgan just got in the race. What they were trying to do with this shell game has been torpedoed. Now, you tell me, you know, Asa supporters be like, but he cut taxes $150 million. We also wasted $200 million on software that doesn't work. So $150 million is not that much. But if you've grown spending by $600 million and you raise taxes on candy and soda, you raise taxes, you created a digital downloads tax, you created a tire tax and raised, you know, you tell me, has government grown or has government gotten smaller? Has it decreased in size? And under Governor Asa Hutchinson, Arkansas's government has grown. And it's grown faster than the private sector's grown. And that's not a good thing. And that we haven't even mentioned, by the way. We haven't even mentioned giving your money to Chinese communist companies with the hopes that one day, in the next 5-10 years, they'll create X amount of jobs. We haven't even talked about that. That's very unpopular with people once you kind of give them the facts, by the way, on that. Economic development. What about just ending the corporate income tax here in Arkansas? That's some economic development I could get behind.
The news and and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Out to other legislators. I mean, this is opening up a lot of questions. There should be major efforts down there to try and get to the truth, but yet it just doesn't happen. I mean, no one down there wants to talk about it or dig into it or try and get out there and expose the truth and try and get the facts out there. They just want to talk around it and keep going on, and then they'll say all these other people that have been speaking out are bad people and you shouldn't elect them.
So I've been kind of floating this idea for a while. It's a hypothesis, and I don't think it always applies. But for the most part, what I can tell is legislators that have real jobs back home that are not in financial trouble personally, they tend to be able to stand up and think independently and not just go along to get along with the Marble Palace crowd. Now, the way I see it, Brian, you're one of those people because you're a farmer. And I think if we send people down there that have to have the money or worse, are in financial trouble, I think that's a recipe for disaster because there's so many opportunities for graft down there. Can you respond to that? Let me ask you this. Do you think having a real job back home keeps you grounded and connected outside of that bubble?
Well, it definitely should, and that world down there is a very tempting world, and if you go down there looking for something, you're going to find it. I mean, so we've seen with avenue after avenue of these Medicaid entities wiring money to, Senator Files, giving loans, lobbyists giving loans. I mean, you look at the personal connections, financial connections of Medicaid entities with legislators now that's coming out. You look at at different questions, different times in debates, Bob Ballinger would sit there and say, well, with the GIF problem, there was no accountability. Well, no, Bob, there was accountability. It's called the do-right rule. And I can tell you that of all the projects that's been funded in my district with GIF funds, I've never done personal business with them, okay? Bob Ballinger continues to be on the legal team of Warren Paris and still maintains, after he was pled guilty to giving kickbacks, with your tax dollars, Bob Ballinger sits there and maintains he was a pawn in it. No, he wasn't a pawn. He was an active participant. And if that's your assertion of what went on that deal, then obviously your question, you should be questioned about, business dealings. I mean, do you see Bob Ballinger saying anything at all about Jeremy Hutchison and Michael Lamoureux? Their business ties exposed. Multiple times down here, chances to speak out, Medicaid disclosure, bills that would have exposed this, level of cronyism and corruption down there. Nothing at all. Mm-hmm. But, we're getting ready. Like I said, our campaign's going good. We're pushing for the final drive. I can tell you that we're picking up a lot of people that are beginning to see what's going on out there and the truth. And then when you continually defend a position and defend a position and tell people one thing, when in fact, in Little Rock, something much different happened, you're going to get called out eventually. And that's what's happened up here at the local newspapers. That's what's happened out here with people and say, well, I got this story, I got this story, and I got this story. And then all of a sudden the truth comes out, and then it's still, Brian King did this. Mm-hmm. It's never, Bob is throughout this campaign has always been the victim and never the cause of anything. And, if you look at the college situation, there was one way to not be involved in that whole scandal, is to not be involved in it. And I'm saying in the fact of giving the money to the college, doing personal business with the college, conducting the land deal to help make that with taxpayers, then going out and defending the college president whose family took out, $1 million from 2012 to 2016 while the college was struggling financially. The Paris family made sure they were financially taken care of. and then come along and Bob sits there and says and maintains his innocence. And then when he pleads guilty to giving kickbacks with your tax dollars, he turns around and acts like he's a pawn instead of an active participant.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, coming up at 7:33, we'll be talking with Republican gubernatorial candidate Jan Morgan. Will be back with us at 7:33. Okay, hey, welcome back to the program. We got Fort Smith attorney on the line. Joey McCutcheon is back with us. Joey, thanks for coming on this morning.
Hey, great to be back. Thank you, Paul.
So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about where we are right now with this Ecclesia College Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. There's a lot of people that want to know about this land deal, this General Improvement Fund money that went to buy this land that was valued at $200,000, but then they bought it for $600,000. Talk a little bit about where we are now, Joey.
Well, that's a great question. Where we are now is where we were before, in the dark, because Ecclesia, through its lawyers, Travis Story and Bob Ballinger, Mr. Ballinger says that he's not the lawyer. Well, that's curious. He did the deed work for this $200,000 value of $200,000 that Ecclesia paid $675,000 for. But anyway, they put up a stone wall, basically continuing the claim that they're a private. I guess they're calling themselves a church now, as opposed to a school in their pleadings. But so they're stonewalling. We filed a motion to compel documents as it relates to the illegal exaction, and so they still have time to respond. I believe they have several more days where they can respond, but at that point, if they don't produce the documents that we've asked for, we're going to ask the court to set it for a hearing.
Okay. And so do we think it's going to be what, like after the primary, before we actually see any of these documents?
Yeah, it looks like that it's going to be after the primary, unfortunately. I think the voters should be entitled to see all of these documents. Again, why would this college fight so hard to protect these documents? And it just has all the makings of of impropriety, and certainly it gives the appearance of impropriety. Mm-hmm. And I just think that the voters, particularly in this primary between Senator King and Representative Ballinger, deserve to have all the information.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So this land deal, this is from the Southwest Times Record. They wrote that the house and property, which was 3870 Owls Drive in Springdale, was sold for $675,000 to Ecclesia College, had been valued by the county at $204,600 on December 2nd, 2013. Ballinger said Friday the reason the land sold for more than 3 times its estimated value was because of the U.S. 412 Northern Bypass. Ballinger is running for the Senate District 5 against incumbent State Senator Brian King. But then the paper quotes Bob Ballinger saying, quote, "There was no GIF money at that time," Ballinger said in relation to the Hollingsworth land purchase by Ecclesia. No GIF money was involved in that transaction. Now, Joey, I've got some documents here that can prove that statement to be completely false. Are you aware of this?
I am. I've actually got the document too. Got a letter here dated September 25th, 2013, from J. Michael Norton to Warren Paris of Ecclesia College, stating that the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development District is pleased to notify you that it has approved a General Improvement Funds grant to Ecclesia College, and it was CC'd to the Honorable Bob Allen Ballinger, and it says that the grant, the gift grant, is a community development grant to Ecclesia College. The funds were appropriated to the gift program through an act sponsored by Arkansas State Representative Bob Ballinger. And, you know, Representative Ballinger goes on to state also that no gift money was involved in that transaction. I mean, this application from Orrin Paris for the $5,000 from Representative Ballinger states that the project summary is 23 acres of property acquisition to provide for much-needed additional student residence space. I mean, that's just not truthful. It is just not truthful. It's it's kind of like
you're looking right now. I mean, I'm looking at right now a check for $5,000 from the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development District. The date is September 25th, 2013. I mean, this is the check. This is Ballinger's $5,000. You know, going towards it, right? I mean, is that accurate?
That's exactly accurate. But it also, Paul, going back to the legislative session in 2017, as a transparency advocate, I sat in the hearings on Senate Bill 373, which would have basically gutted FOIA and created this attorney-client exception. You know, Mr. Ballinger publicly has stated that there was no organized opposition against 373. That's just a falsehood.
Yeah.
I mean, the Arkansas Press Association was right there with me, was right there with my transparency advocate Jim Parsons from Northwest Arkansas, among others. There was massive organized opposition. Professor Robert Steinbuck from the who wrote the FOIA book was involved he wasn't actually at the hearings because he was out of town, but he was actively involved in fighting against 373. So, you know, it's not like it's he said, she said thing. I mean, we've got actual videos of that, just like we have actual documents to prove that what Representative Ballinger's saying is just not truthful when it comes to these sunshine issues. And, Paul, as we know, the only thing that holds government accountable there's two things, and hopefully we'll talk about the second one in a minute, but the first one is our Freedom of Information Act, and the second one, as our founders knew, was the right to trial by jury.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both under attack.
I want to talk about that second one here in just a minute, but I want to kind of put a bookend on this when it comes to the general thing with Bob Ballinger is this. He directed general improvement funds to his client. I mean, that's accurate, right? He directed general improvement funds to Ecclesia, which is a client of his. I mean,
that's absolutely true.
And that doesn't look good. I mean, at the very least, it doesn't look good considering everybody, all the corruption that we're seeing, being prosecuted right now. And And then you look at the land deal, and you were quoted, Joey, as saying in this Southwest Times piece, no one pays more than fair market value to cash in when properties go up. They buy at fair market to benefit. Also, why, when the college was struggling, invest in a land gamble? I'm told there have been no real estate value shown even close to it. So there's just something suspect about this land deal, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I say provide the documents. I mean, talk about it. We saw an excellent piece not only by John Lovett at the Southwest Times that you're referring to, but also Mike Masterson wrote on this.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's only more questions, because when asked about this land transaction, where they pay $675,000 for property valued at $200,000, all we get are more things that are not truthful, more statements by Representative Ballinger that are not truthful. And
do you think the Southwest Times is going to correct the record? I mean, when it comes to what he said in this piece, I mean, what he said in this John Lovett piece, which again is a good piece, but when he says that there was no GIF money at that time, and yet those of you watching at conduitnews.com or YouTube or facebook.com/conduitnews, I mean, we just showed the documents saying that at that time, in fact, when the land deal was done, there was General Improvement Fund money that was going for that, for the purchase of the land.
Well, it's easily provable, and I can't predict what the Southwest Times Record will do, but I certainly think that they would have a follow-up story to again talk about the inaccuracies, the what appears to be just false lies.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Joey. Let's talk about issue number 1 on the ballot, SJR 8. If we can keep with this race, with Bob Ballinger challenging Brian King. Bob Ballinger's very proud of this tort reform amendment. He goes around talking about how great it is. It, of course, I mean, I'm not a fan of it. I don't support it. I'm going to vote against it. And this is we've got. Let me just ask you this. Bob Ballinger, when he came on the show last, he said that the family counsel and trial attorneys are participating in an unholy alliance. And from my standpoint, I just think, no, I think, if you've got a pro-life organization, they're just looking about, we want to be pro-life from conception all the way to natural death. And this was a bill written for for nursing home owners, wasn't it?
Well, it absolutely was. And if you'll give me a minute or two, I'd like to address what's happening here. You want to talk about an unholy alliance. Number one, we have to, again, go back to Jake Files, Senator Jake Files, who is going to be sentenced June 18th for wire fraud, money laundering regarding to another gift transaction in Fort Smith on the River Valley Sports Complex. But the interesting thing, Paul, is that there was another great reporting by John Lovett, Southwest Times Record, who has reported that Sebastian County prosecuting Danny Shue has asked the feds about the $80,000 wire transfer from nursing home owner David Norsworthy to Files. 1 week after tort reform, SJR 1 was introduced in 2014. So that could be a very, very interesting development. Who knows, we may have a prosecution of a nursing home owner, David Norsworthy. Norsworthy nor Senator Files have given any explanation for the $80,000 wire transfer. So we'll see what the feds do on that, whether we're going to have further prosecutions of David Norsworthy.
Well, I think, we were talking with Jerry Cox last week of the Family Council, and he said he's heard from legislators who, he didn't name any names, but who originally supported this, but are now coming out and they're saying, I think I'm changing my mind on this. I don't think this is the kind of tort reform we need. And you know what? Something's dawning on me, Joey. It may be because they're realizing about this $80,000 and the fact that this is for the nursing home owners. That is what this bill, this SJR 8 is for. It's specifically crafted for them. And if there's about to be a big blow up of prosecutions over this, why would we want to support, a level of corruption that is, about to be exposed to everybody in the headlines?
Well, it's not just Jerry Cox of the Family Council who's against this, because it places an arbitrary value on human life of the elderly, of children who may be raped, of stay-at-home mothers. It's Rose Mims of Arkansas Right to Life who has said, that she thinks that this bill will attract abortionists to our state. And let me mention this. Are you aware that the DHS has just taken over 2 nursing homes run by Skyline Arkansas Healthcare?
No, sir.
Which run 2 nursing homes in Hazen and Dirks. Also, an interesting connection. Did you know that while the states haven't had to take over these nursing homes because they're not delivering and food's not accessible for the residents apparently, and their safety's endangered, this same group gave $10,000 to the last tort reform effort. While they can't provide quality care to their own residents, they're given $10,000. This out-of-state nursing home company from New Jersey is giving $10,000 to a tort reform effort. That's only one of the scandals involving nursing homes. Did you hear about the Highland?
Nope. Joey, are you there? We lost you. We lost Joey McCutcheon. We'll see if we can't get him back. We got to take a break anyway. Don't go anywhere, folks. Back in just a moment.
It's been said that freedom is in the DNA of every American, and I would say every Arkansan. Our nation and state are now in danger of letting our God-given freedom slip away by allowing government to be the arbiter of freedom. I agree with President Ronald Reagan, who said, and I quote, "In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem," end quote. Government is too large, too overreaching, and too corrupt. President Reagan also said, and I quote, "The most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government and I'm here to help,' end quote. This race is about voting for the candidate who best represents your interest, your family, and your future. For the last 2 terms in office, I've kept my promises to you, and I ask for your help to continue to represent our joint values of faith, family, and a protected future. I'm State Representative Dan Sullivan, and the choice is clear. I ask for your vote to continue our stand for freedom. Early voting is underway, and the election is May 22nd.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
Hello, this is Frank Glidewell, and I'm asking for your vote for State Senate. I've lived in Sebastian County all my life. I've had the privilege of serving as Justice of the Peace, County Judge, and State Representative. I've always done so with honesty and integrity. I've owned a small business for 30 years. We've got a major problem in Arkansas with the corrupt politicians. I have no special interest supporting my campaign. I am the only Republican candidate in my race who has not voted for Obamacare. That is taking hundreds of millions of dollars a year away from our schools, roads, and law enforcement.
Paid for by Frank Glidewell.
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So we lost Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon, but we got him back on the program. Joey, we're going to wrap things up here, but I will say this: as you were describing that, this issue one, the bad tort reform, people on Facebook saying that this sounds like organized crime. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, we've got not only that, not only do we have the Files Norsworthy $880,000 wire transfer, looks like a bribe to get their tort reform passed. Now we've got the DHS taking over Skyline nursing homes, taking over 2 nursing homes for poor quality of care. We see that same nursing home chain, an out-of-state nursing home chain, has given big bucks, $10,000 to try to pass tort reform to take away the rights of the elderly. And Paul, also we see the Highlands Holding Group, which is again another out-of-state nursing home owner, recently going belly up. They also gave $12,000 to the Arkansas Healthcare Association, of which David Norsworthy is a board member. You know, and these out-of-state. Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
These out-of-state nursing home owners at this Highlands group that just went bankrupt. Their operators took $4.3 million through their management company and left creditors holding the bag for over $5 million.
Wow.
And if we think we're going to see less of this, if we pass this so-called tort reform, this government takeover of our court system, massive government overreach, then what we're going to see is we're going to see poor quality of care increase in the state of Arkansas through nursing homes. Conduct rewarded is conduct repeated.
Yeah.
And we're going to see bad nursing home, out-of-state nursing home owners flocking to our state, and our elderly are going to suffer greatly. We can't let that happen, Paul.
Joey McCutcheon, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the program. We'll do this again soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Hey, folks, I was talking last hour. We're up against a heartbreak here in about 2.5 minutes. I was talking last hour about some of these desperate attempts, getting desperate. There was something that was reported to me yesterday. There was a flyer that was put in some churches' bulletins supporting Bob Ballinger, and I guess this was in Eureka Springs. So this was told to me. It was reported, that these flyers went out criticizing, trying to make Brian King look like he's not pro-life, and Bob is pro-life, and based on these bills and everything else. And I'm just thinking, really, we're getting to the point where we're putting campaign flyers, or maybe I don't think it was officially from the Bob Ballinger campaign. We're getting to the point where we're putting inserts in church worship guides. And I'm just thinking, that's about as desperate as using a Christian college and thinking that it's going to be okay to have John Woods write a medical marijuana amendment where the tax dollars for medical marijuana get put into a Christian college. That's about the same thing. And also, by the way, the law firm that Bob Ballinger works for, who he also is Ecclesia's attorney here with the land deal. That guy's on the Medical Marijuana Commission. Travis Story's on the Medical Marijuana Commission. I mean, when you put all this together, I mean, that's, to me, you know what? That's about right. I'm kind of getting sick and tired of using, this veneer, and we're using it from a religious standpoint, like a religious veneer, and I'm really kind of getting upset with it because I don't think it's appropriate. Look at what's been going on. Look at this, this Christian college that was used in a money laundering scheme and complicit in it. Matter of fact, in order for the scheme to work, that you have to have the Christian college doing this, and it really doesn't look good. And it's sad that you're going to start putting voting records inside church bulletins. I mean, my goodness, what's going on? It's about the same thing as taking a Christian college and having a scheme that was revealed in court of passing medical marijuana and then using the tax dollars to go to a Christian college. And the excuse is, the ends justify the means.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state. And their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, and I know the Madison County Record kind of made the same conclusion of, he needs to be a little bit more outraged about what Ecclesia actually did. I mean, if it wasn't for Ecclesia and Orrin Paris paying the consulting firm a cut of the GIF money, and then the consulting firm pays the kickback to the legislature. I mean, that's the you've got to have that part. That's the integral part that makes the whole scheme work. And so, yeah, an active participant is true. We're talking with Senator Brian King. We don't have a lot of time left. Brian, your Medicaid disclosure bill is a really good start to try to reform this corruption down here when it comes to Medicaid and the Medicaid mafia we've talked about before. A couple months ago, you were once again speaking out against the corruption in Arkansas. This is before all of the convictions came down and everything else. And the governor, said that you're increasingly irrelevant. I think in the context of we are in now, you're actually more relevant than you've ever been because you're the one that's been speaking out against this. The governor has not put forth a plan to reform the massive corruption that we have in the state. And I'd love to get your comments on that, considering you essentially have been a leader in this, trying to get the ball rolling to restore the confidence of the people back into their government.
Yeah, and that's just it. As I keep saying, the culture down there is to not discuss it. And if something comes out, then to put out some sham statement about what we're committed to after the fact. And you're exactly right. I mean, the culture down there, I keep asking, people keep asking me about what's going on down there. And I say, listen, appropriation bills, they're sneaking stuff through. It is a bad process. But once again, you have the people that need to keep this process going to funnel their special interest. I mean, I keep saying the same thing. The big insurance companies and big Medicaid has been running the show down there, and they can't get out of the crutches of that or the trap of that, and they just continue to get this story and hope they get through the next election and try and mislead and deceive people about somebody's actual record. That's what this whole campaign has been about. With Bob, has been about Brian King this, Brian King that, and each time he winds up being discredited. He said I wasn't pro-life, wasn't committed to pro-life, I was endorsed by Right to Life. I mean, that's a perfect example. He goes down there and says on the
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right. 870-275-9799. Welcome back to the program. We have Jan Morgan. Thanks for coming back on, Jan.
Hi, Paul. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic this morning. The real question is, how are you? You're doing like 19-hour days now.
We've been doing 19-hour days, Paul, for a long time, for months. But, hey, that's okay because it's kind of like getting back to the old days of campaigning before you had TV advertising and social media marketing. It's actually getting out there, meeting the people, shaking their hands, listening to the issues they're concerned about, and then talking about your solutions. It's tough, but it's been very rewarding. And honestly, I would not take for the experience I've had over the past 8 months, traveling the state and meeting people.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much about different areas of our state and the specific issues that they're having that our government is not addressing, as well as I've learned a lot about our state business.
Yeah.
A lot I wish I hadn't found out, but, because it's almost overwhelming. You talk about a lot on your show, the corruption and the things going on, and it's even much, much, much deeper than we've even gotten into. So, I've been saying from the beginning, we are in a crisis moment in our state. And we're either going to turn the opposite direction, the people are going to take control, or we're going to continue down this path of excessive spending, excessive taxation, and corruption. That's the bottom line.
You guys are also, though, having fun on the campaign trail. I saw where, I guess, Reggie, who your Facebook Live videos, which do, obviously really well, he's always driving you. You always make sure to say, hey, I'm not doing a Facebook Live video while driving. But you guys have a good time because I know, he took a photo while, you were getting a little catnap, trying to, and that was fun because that got posted on social media. And I'm just like, these guys are out there. You guys are regular people. You're trying to make a difference, and you're having a good time while doing it. And I think that's just so refreshing.
Yes, it is, and I'm gonna miss that. We were talking the other day on the way home from somewhere, and we were laughing, and I said, "Gosh, we have spent so much time together, the four of us, and trying to get across this state every single day, really in a vehicle, 4 and 5, 6, 8 hours of driving a day, moving from one end of the state together." I said, "What? If we don't win this, when this is over, I'm going to miss you all." Mm-hmm. And they said, well, about once a month we can just get in the truck and drive across the state and talk to people.
That would be great. That would be great.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be great because, we want you to win, Jan. I mean, I think at this point you're the only one. I mean, you're speaking against the corruption. You're the obvious choice, and the fact that you're in this race has made Asa have to take all these conservative positions that he wouldn't have otherwise taken. And I think it's such a good, a positive thing, that in and of itself. But I want to talk about the prime. Go ahead. Well, hang on. I'll let
well, it's also
go ahead.
Well, it's also it's forced Asa to go places he's never gone.
Yeah.
For example, this weekend, just a couple of days ago, we were up in an area of the state. Look at where we were. It's hard to remember from one day to the next. We were up in Marshall, Arkansas, and then another little town that I think they've never seen the governor. And someone with the Republican Party that came up to me and said, "Thank you so much for coming here because you came here. The governor came here today to speak as well." And she said, "The fact is, the very fact that he showed up in our little town where he's never even acknowledged our existence tells me that he knows he's in trouble."
Yeah. No, he is. I think at this point he is. Everything he's doing is kind of indicative of somebody who is very cautious about this election. Now, I want to talk to you about in 2016, Donald Trump. He won the primary here in the state of Arkansas. Ted Cruz came in second. Marco Rubio came in third. Now, in that primary, there were voters who came out who've never participated in the process before. And that, I believe, is why Ace is worried, because if those people, if we have another 2016 and those people who are now kind of on the radar because we know that they voted, if they come out and they vote anti-establishment like they did when they voted for Donald Trump, and for sure we can now say 100% Donald Trump was the anti-establishment candidate, it's going to be a very close race, Jan.
Yes, and these people are a little confused. We're having events across the state, Paul, that are not connected with the Republican Party. See, their way of doing things is just the Republican Party is king of where you put all of your ducks, and you just go speak to the committees. You make sure you have the Republican Party, the establishment of the party, in your hands, and that's all you have to worry about. Well, my presence in this race, from the very beginning, the establishment side of the party has been cutting me out, and that's because Asa and his people pressured them to not let me speak. So we immediately, conservatives in areas all over the state, who aren't even active members of the Republican Party because they are sick and tired of the politics and the establishment positions on issues. So they started having their own events. Jan Morgan, just come to our city, we'll have a Jan Morgan for Governor event. And so his people were saying, well, who invited y'all here? Who's sponsoring those events? And we're saying real people, just people. They don't know what to do about that. They don't know how to address that. They don't know what to do about a candidate who's not reliant on the establishment Republican Party acceptance to gain votes and to gain opportunities to speak. And now, the establishment of the party in many pockets has had to allow us to speak at their committee meetings. And they may sit there with their arms folded and grimaces on their faces, as I'm speaking, but they know I'm telling the truth.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point. I actually hadn't thought of that. What you're saying there is the fact that Asa tried to control the county committees and get you disinvited or put pressure to have you disinvited. That actually got your message out to more people because then they had their own events. I mean, that actually is, they're kind of the cause of their own demise in that case.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yes, exactly. And that makes people angry. The more they try to shut me out, the more angry the populace becomes. So it seems like almost everything that he and his people have done, their attacks on me, the personal attacks, the calling me Jezebel, the calling me a spirit, everything that they've done is actually backfired and helped me more than hurt me. And really, honestly, Paul, what else are they going to say about me? She's conservative. She's too conservative. I mean, what can they attack me on?
Yeah.
It's just not there.
And there was a bogus attack on you last week that went out on Twitter by a spouse of a government or ACE's employee, and it was disproven immediately. And really the only reason I want to bring this up, Jan, because I'd like to have you address it, but because it was the government that messed up. And that's what's so interesting about it is they do this phony attack saying you owe back taxes. You debunk it with documents, verifiable proof from the government. Say our bad, we made a mistake. I don't owe any
taxes, right?
Yeah, you owe no taxes. Let's be very clear. You owe no taxes. Tell us about the mix-up.
Well, the mix-up was that I worked in Texarkana, Arkansas at the time and lived in Texarkana, Arkansas. And as people may or may not know, Texarkana, Arkansas residents are exempt from the state income tax, and that's because we live in a border city that is bordered by Texarkana, Texas, where there is no state income tax. And in order for Texarkana, Arkansas to be competitive, the state years ago of Arkansas gave us that exemption. So if you live and work in Texarkana, Arkansas, you do not have to pay state income tax. Well, that's where I lived and worked for years and years. And then when I moved to Hot Springs, Arkansas, and that year that I moved to Hot Springs and I filed my taxes, the state came back because they had my new Hot Springs address, and they said, oh, wait, you live in Hot Springs. You should have been paying state income taxes. You owe taxes for all these years. And then I had to go back and prove to them with my residential records and my employment records and a note from my employee, and I cleared it all up. It took about 30 days for me to get all the paperwork in order, but once it was cleared, the state said, oh, okay, we see what's happened here. I guess their computer system messed up and just kicked that out. And it was fixed. I didn't have to pay them all the $7,000 because I didn't owe it. I never owed it. It was a mistake on their part. So that was clear, and it was over with. But all ACES people wanted to do is find that initial document from the state that said, oh, you owe all these years in taxes, and they produced that. But yet they also, out of that same file, didn't bother to produce the next piece of paper, which is that I'm free and clear. So that, but that's always the way Asa, that's the way his whole campaign has gone. That's the way he legislates. That's the way he governs. He governs that way. It's shell games and games rather than just being honest with the people.
Yeah.
And once we proved it, people said, okay, this is over with, except that it's never over with this person because that's all they can hold on to, and they want to try to just keep on. But that's hurting them once again more than it's helping them.
No, it is, because it was and it shows you that they are, they're getting their water boys. Again, this was all put out there by the spouse of an Asa Hutchinson employee that makes $83,000 a year in the governor's office.
Right.
And so you kind of think, uh-oh, if Asa loses this, my household's going to lose $83,000. I mean, and it's verifiable. You can look all that up. We talked about it. And so you just get, anybody whose wallet's going to get lighter from Asa Hutchinson losing, well, it's obvious how they're going to vote. But there's a lot more of us than there are government employees.
Yes, there are. But actually, if you look at the people right now, if you look at the little list of the people who are yelling the loudest about my presence in this race, Paul, if you want to know who benefits the most off of this gravy train of corruption that we have in Little Rock, look at the people who have nothing to do with this race and yet are yelling the loudest about Jan Morgan.
Yeah.
Those are the people you need to look at and say, okay, what is the motive there? And it's always going to be about money. There's always a money trail. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know what? Speaking of money, this whole issue with my getting that tax exemption while I was living in Texarkana, Arkansas, brings up the fact that I am the only candidate in this race who's truly talking about how we need to make that possible for all people in Arkansas. We need to get to the point where we don't have a state income tax for all people, not just Texas and Arkansas residents. I'm the only candidate who's out there saying this is the direction we need to go.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, the fact that Texarkana has to have that special exemption is a rebuke and on everybody else, on the whole system. It's saying that we're overtaxed and we're overregulated and we need more money. And that's what you've been saying. We got to have more money back into the hands of the people.
Absolutely, or we can't continue to compete. And it's hurting us. We're surrounded by states that don't have a state income tax. And the people on the streets, I'm listening to them and talking to them, the tax burden is outrageous. And the fact that our governor, his tax reform commission, my opponent's tax reform commission is looking at more ways to get more tax money out of the people is egregious. That should cost him this election in itself. His stance on constitutional carry and the fact that he will not clarify for the people that we have constitutional carry in this state, that stance should cost him this election. We could just go on and on.
Well,
There's so many issues. And the only reason he may not be in trouble is because of uneducated, low-information voters.
Yeah, that's true. Hopefully, they're getting your message. Hopefully, they're getting Conduit News. Using this platform to say, "Hey, these are the issues that the people are concerned about." Let's talk about constitutional carry for a second, okay?
Okay. Right.
Because this is a really good. I want to use this as an example of people who get new information. And then they're able to change their minds based on what the facts are. And so with constitutional carry, there was a time where you subscribed to the concept that you had to have a permit to carry concealed.
To carry a
correct?
gun in Arkansas, right? To carry concealed. And the reason I thought that, Paul, is because I was in the process of becoming an Arkansas State Police concealed handgun license instructor. I was taking the classes, and at that time, I was new to Hot Springs, and that's what we were being taught. Arkansas State Police were teaching instructors, you have to have a license to conceal carry. And according to Justin McDaniel, who was the Attorney General back then, that was his position, okay? So I was simply saying, look, this is what, and that's what I said. That's what I said on the Internet. That's what I said on social media. According to our Attorney General and according to Arkansas State Police, you have to have a license to conceal carry. That was a fact that I was being taught by state police. So, that's what I was simply telling the people based on what, we were, who would have thought that state police would be misleading instructors in this state? And who would have thought that your Attorney General at that time would misrepresent the truth to the people? So I was simply saying what we were being told.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, I got an education thanks to that Patriots Act 746. They said, hey, Dan, have you read the Arkansas Constitution, Article 2 of the Arkansas Constitution? And back then, no, I had not sat down and read the Arkansas Constitution. I was, inundated with paperwork and learning what I had to learn to teach those classes. So I did, and once I learned, I said, oh, so you mean state police are misleading the people? They're misleading instructors in this state, concealed handgun license instructors. So is our Attorney General. And that's when I started getting involved in the fight locally. I have always believed in and supported constitutional carry, Paul. I've been fighting for that on a national level for years, long before I got in the fight in Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
So I was glad to find that out. Then I got in the fight here to educate people.
I'm so encouraged to hear that. I wanted to highlight that because I wanted people to know, you have the correct stance now according to what the statutes are, and yet
yes, but my opponent does not.
Mm-hmm.
My opponent does not. But yes, his little water boys will say, look, Jan Morgan didn't know, and she was misleading the people. Well, that was years ago. I'm telling people the truth now because I found out the truth. But what about your guy, folks? What about the current governor? Why is he misleading the people? I showed a screenshot from his Arkansas ASA for Governor page, a screenshot from just a few months back. I saved it where he said, Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, but that is not inconsistent with a licensing requirement. You can still carry, and you should still check with your county prosecutor because it's subject to interpretation. That is a quote from our current governor.
And he's doing that, in a lot of ways to protect the Arkansas State budget, but our Arkansas State Police budget. But I believe he doesn't truly believe in it. I think he believes in the permission slip thing. I think that's what he's comfortable with. Licensing your right back to you. That is more what he believes.
The governor has never been on the right side of this issue to begin with. He has, which is why I got a higher NRA score than he did, because he went on national television as a spokesperson for the NRA several years ago on CNN and supported expanded background checks. See, then the NRA had to come behind him and try to clean up that mess because, of course, the NRA doesn't support expanded background checks. And then he came out with what he said, on his social media pages. So he's in a lot of trouble on the Second Amendment.
And this brings
it very hard to convince people otherwise.
Brings it full circle, Jan, because he also took that photo last year with Moms Demand Action when he passed the enhanced carry mess and everything else. And I mean that really is full circle because that's when you got involved, in this specific issue that led you to realize, according to, I've heard you talk about this many times, hey, we've got this Republican trifecta, and yet we've got Republicans fighting against gun rights?
Right. Yeah, it was, that was the most horrible thing for him to do, to sit down and meet with Moms Demand Action and take cozy, friendly pictures with them so that they could go on social media and brag about, look, we got to meet with the governor today, and we had our time with the governor, and he was so nice. And, he's arm in arm with Moms Demand Action while Senator Linda Collins-Smith and other conservatives were battling with ACE's Waterboy Republicans on issues that involved removing rights, taking away rights of armed Americans in Arkansas. So, and it took us months to get in to see him after that.
Yep.
To share our side, but he certainly made time for Moms Demand Action. That speaks volumes.
Yeah, it really does. The radical anti-Second Amendment group, Moms Demand Action. Jan, I know you got to go. I know you've got a busy campaign day. Jan Morgan, I appreciate it so much, and I'd love to talk to you soon. And I'll give you the last word. Early voting's underway.
Early voting's underway. Don't forget, always remember this, folks. Asa Hutchinson refused to debate me. I challenged him from day one, the day that we announced we were running. That was on January 1. We've been formally challenging him every single day. He still refuses to debate me. That speaks volumes about his fear of facing me and facing the public and having to defend his unacceptable establishment progressive tax and spend big government record.
Yeah. Jan Morgan, I appreciate it. Folks, we've got to go to break. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplerpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplerpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplerpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
Arkansans need a true judicial conservative on the Supreme Court. David Sterling is that man. Sterling believes in the separation of powers in our government, and he will interpret the Constitution based on the original intent of the Founding Fathers. A member of the NRA and the Christian Legal Society, Sterling will serve Arkansans with honor and integrity as our next Supreme Court Justice. On May 22nd, vote David Sterling.
Paid for by Friends of David Sterling.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, Contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
With public corruption and scandals in the news daily, Arkansans need someone with honesty and integrity in the state Senate. Mark Johnson is that man. Mark Johnson isn't a politician. He's a fifth-generation Arkansan and a successful small business owner. Mark Johnson will make ethics a priority and demand swift punishment for those who violate the public trust. Mark Johnson is pro-life and supports the Second Amendment. In the Republican primary, vote Mark Johnson for the state Senate. Paid for by Mark Johnson for Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And if you do forget to tune in, just go to conduitnews.com, click on podcasts, click on video archives, and you can get the live stream very easily there. Or you can go to SoundCloud. You can go to the iTunes store, search for Conduit News. It's very, very simple. Follow us on Twitter. Go to the YouTube page. Specifically, we're on a mission on the YouTube front with Conduit News. Subscribe, click the little bell for notifications, because we want to get enough YouTube subscribers so that we can be discriminated against for being conservatives. Will help us do that. That would be greatly appreciated. Again, the YouTube page, Conduit News. So if you miss it, it's available. So if you missed the first hour, there's a lot of you driving right now. Keep the hands at 10 and 2. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. When you get to work, if you missed the first hour, go back and listen to it. It's very easy with all of those options. Or, go to Facebook. If you're at a desk, a computer, or whatever, go to Facebook, facebook.com/Conduit News, and you can just click on the video that's going to be available right there, and you can watch the first hour that you missed, or watch whatever that you missed. All right, I think you will enjoy it. It'll be a way to catch up, because if you're only getting 30 minutes of the show a day, it's not enough. If you're getting an hour of the program, that's better, but you need to get the full 2 hours every single day. So tomorrow on the program, hang on, let me kind of preview this for you. We're going to have our Conduit for Commerce policy segment. I know on Thursday this week, we're kind of filling things out. Things are filling up really quickly, but I know on Thursday on the program, we're going to have Senate candidate Mark Johnson is scheduled to be with us. We also have some more corruption news that we're going to get to as well. And listen, kind of wrapping up what I said in the first hour at the very beginning, I want you to know something, because I've observed something over the weekend with social media. Folks, they are very worried. People who attend court, the royal court at the Marble Palace, are extremely worried because you are getting the truth. You're getting information that they don't want you to have, and we are in their heads. You would not believe, we wouldn't believe some of the conspiracy theories that they're now advancing, and it's comical to know how wrong they are. Anyway, so just know that because of you, we're all inside their heads. anyway, we're going to continue to speak the truth. That's what this is about. This has always been about the truth. And also measurably reducing the size and scope of government. We've got to drain that swamp in Little Rock. First step of draining the swamp in Little Rock, admit there's a swamp in Little Rock, Arkansas. Be safe.